The Me-110C was developed too late to be tested at the Luftwaffe's primary proving ground of the Spanish Civil War. The C version had 1,100 horsepower Daimler-Benz fuel-injected engines and could fly at a top speed of 349 miles per hour. It had a range of 500 miles, depending on loaded weight and weather. It was armed with two forward-firing 20-millimeter cannon and 4 machine guns in the nose, and a single rear machine gun at the back of the cockpit. The Messerschmitt 110 was successful during the early campaigns against Poland, Belgium, France, and Holland. But it revealed its shortcomings during the Battle of Britain, when it fell easy prey to RAF Hurricanes and Spitfires. The losses were so serious that the Luftwaffe ended up in the ridiculous situation of having to send Messerschmitt 109s to escort the 110s. The only advantage of the 110 was its greater fuel capacity, which allowed it to stay with the bombers longer. Messerschmitt then developed the 110D version, which carried more fuel in a large auxiliary tank. This was followed by the 110F version, which was similar to the D, and then the G, with more powerful engines. Some later versions of the Me-110 had guns which fired directly upwards, allowing the 110s to attack Allied bombers from below, where they were most vulnerable. While taking a heavy toll on American and British bombers, the Messerschmitt 110 also developed a reputation as a powerful ground attack aircraft, particularly in Russia. Its heavy forward-firing armament and added ability to carry bombs under the wings made it invaluable to the troops fighting on the front line. The lack of effective Soviet fighter opposition until the end of the war gave the 110 an extra lease on life. The Messerschmitt 110 was also used to help protect German cities and industrial targets against the daytime bombing raids by American flying fortresses. However, this was short-lived. Once the United States developed long-range escort fighters of their own, particularly the P-51 Mustang, the Me-110 found itself hopelessly outclassed because of its lack of maneuverability in a dogfight. At the outbreak of war in 1939, Italy had almost as many fighters as Britain and France combined. Nearly half of them were obsolete biplanes with fixed gear. Italian industry had been slow to respond to changing demands and development of more powerful engines. Even though the Italian warplanes had a good record in pre-war races, they were usually underpowered. When Italy entered the war in 1940, bombers such as the Caproni 133 were equipped with underpowered radial engines. The Fiat G50 Freccia, or Aero, was Italy's first monoplane fighter of all-metal construction. The Aero carried 2 heavy machine guns, fired through the propeller, and had a top speed of over 290 miles per hour. Even by the standards of 1940, it was both underpowered and undergunned. Along with the CR-42 biplane, the Machi MC-200 Lightning formed the backbone of the Regia Aeronautica's fighter arm in 1940. It was soon involved in escorting bombers on raids against the island fortress of Malta. Later, in Albania and Greece, MC-200s did surprisingly well in combat with British Hurricanes. The Lightning also served in North Africa and on the southern flank in Russia. By 1942, its performance was proving totally inadequate, and it was used more and more as a fighter bomber, Later production models used the same wings as the improved MC-202 Folgore and could carry 706 pounds of bombs. For all its faults, the MC-200 served the Italian Air Force well during the early period of the war. Over 1,100 were built, but losses were heavy, and by the time of the armistice, only 33 survived. These continued in service as trainers until 1947. In 1940, the Italian Air Force realized that its fighters needed better engine performance than could be provided by their air-cooled radial engines. So they developed the MC-202 Folgore, or Thunderbolt, powered by the same type of German engine as the Me-109. The more powerful engine and streamlined nose gave a top speed of 370 miles per hour. The MC-202 prototype first flew in August of 1940, and the improvement was immediately noticeable. Machi ordered more engines from Germany and began building them on their own. The MC-202 entered service in 1941, seeing its first action in the skies over Libya in November. More than 1,100 Folgores were produced, and they were a marked improvement over the earlier Lightnings. When 2 extra machine guns were installed in the wings, the Folgore became the best Italian fighter of the war. At its peak, the Folgore equipped 19 Gruppi and saw action from Stalingrad to Tobruk. By 1943, however, the Thunderbolt was again outclassed by Allied fighters, and by the time the Allies invaded Sicily in July, losses left only about 100 operational. When Italy surrendered some 10 weeks later, a mere 53 were still able to fly. In April 1942, Machi introduced the improved model MC-205 Veltro, or Greyhound. Although it had a more powerful engine than the Folgore and could achieve a top speed of nearly 400 miles per hour, it came too late to prevent Italy's collapse. Of the 265 Veltros built, only 66 remained operational at the time of the armistice. Japanese policy in the 1930s was very similar to that of the Italians, and they were also late to develop monoplane fighters. The first models appeared in the mid-1930s, and although lightweight and agile, they were not very fast. Typical of the Japanese fighters of the time, both the Army's Nakajima K-127 and the Navy's Mitsubishi A-5M had 710 horsepower Nakajima radial engines, which gave top speeds of only 280 miles per hour. Also, the planes carried only a pair of machine guns. One of Japan's greatest shortcomings was its failure to continue development of more sophisticated machines. The most famous Japanese fighter of the war was the Navy's Mitsubishi A-6M Raisen, or Zero. Codenamed Zeke by the Allies, the A-6M remains the most celebrated warplane of the Pacific War. Over 11,000 were built in various models. This legendary fighter was developed out of a requirement for higher speed, greater maneuverability, longer endurance, and more firepower than previous Japanese fighters had been able to deliver. The first prototypes flew in April 1939, powered by 780 horsepower Mitsubishi radial engines. Although the early Zeros were agile, top speed was too low, and before it went into production, 950 horsepower Nakajima engines were installed in their place.